Hey guys, this is Archon, and you're looking at Starchaser, Priestess of the Night Sky. This is a Japanese indie game made in Unity, and I think it could be best described as like an action puzzle adventure game about this little girl who gets trapped inside invisible dice after some creepy old guy drugs her over and over again. Apparently using LSD, because it's just, the whole thing looks like a crazy drug trip, and to me, they just look like glass cubes you're walking through, but I guess they're dice, and overall it just looked like the developers' attempt to not have to create environment art, but it's okay, just go with it. After getting past a 30-minute tutorial just to teach you all the mechanics of the game right up front, you can finally get into the game, and it can be a lot of fun, but you gotta get past that first little hump. They really wanted to give you all the mechanics right away. I think it would have been better if they could have taught you throughout playing the game. But, you know, this game has a lot to offer, so if you can put the faults aside, I guarantee you'll find something you enjoy. I loved and hated so much about this game that I don't even know how to say I feel about it. I have entirely mixed feelings, but I'm going to go ahead and give you what really bugged me first, and then I'm going to tell you what I loved about this game. So, just like the game, if you can hold on for the first part, I guarantee you there's stuff that makes this worth it. First of all, the controls. The controls were really hard to get used to. You can use keyboard, but then your right hand is doing the movement. For me, that's really hard, and I used a controller. It does have controller support, but honestly, that didn't make it much better. One of the main buttons is the lock-on button, and you do that with left shift on the keyboard, but with select on the controller. So if you're locking onto a target, you can't move, because you need your left hand to move the joystick. And you also use select to reorient the camera, which is a great thing to do while you're moving, but you can't because it's on your left hand. And so that got really annoying, and I would love if there was some way to change key bindings, but for the life of me, I could not find any way, so I had to deal with that. Eventually it got a little bit better, but the camera was the big problem. You have to move the camera manually. It's not going to move for you, and the left and right trigger what you move it left and right with, but it doesn't work the way I would think it would, and then the right joystick moves it up and down, but you can't always move it up and down, and you can't move it up and down enough, so a lot of times you just get completely disoriented and you don't know where you are. I think the camera programming could use a lot of work. Some of the puzzles just made no sense, and this was usually because of the camera work. I had no idea where I was supposed to go, and I couldn't see my objective. They do put a little orange arrow next to your character pointing you in the direction you should be going in, which helped some, but I still just found myself aimlessly running towards that. And sometimes I felt like I was just skipping entire parts of a level. I would just look at the arrow and then jump off a cliff and hope I landed where I was supposed to, and sometimes that worked, but when I got to the end of the level I was like, I don't think I really just did that level. I'm pretty sure I just fell for 10 minutes. So it's hard to keep track of where you are sometimes, and sometimes during combat it's hard to keep track of where your enemies are. You'll get hit from behind and you're like, wait, there was an enemy behind me? But into the part that I loved. Trust me, there's some stuff that makes this game worth it, and that combat is some of it. The combat felt awesome to me. As long as I could keep track of my enemies and get over the controls, I had so much fun just fighting mobs. You have this locking on mechanism that, again, you can use select or left shift on the keyboard to lock onto an enemy, and then you just spam your attack button and pretty much automatically hit the enemy as long as it doesn't move around too much. And so it's almost mindless once you lock on, but it feels so good. And then by jumping, you can dodge attacks. If you just jump right before you get hit, you automatically do like this counter move, and you don't take any damage. And so the combat is super simple, but you just feel like such a badass fighting mobs in this game. And more than anything, the boss fights. The boss fights in this game were designed so well. I have to say they were up there with some of the best boss fights I've ever played in single-player games. They felt a lot like typical RPG boss fights you'd see in World of Warcraft or Neverwinter or any other really well-made boss fights that have mechanisms that you have to learn through playing the fight. Your first time in the boss fights, you're probably going to die. Probably not going to one-shot them, but those are the best boss fights. If you one-shot a boss, it wasn't hard enough, and it probably wasn't fun enough. And it's not going to tell you how to do the boss fights. Just like any good boss fight, you're going to have to learn by watching the boss. They're going to have tells for all of their moves, and you have to learn how to handle each of those moves and watch out for the tells, and it feels so rewarding when you finally down one of these super hard bosses. And the difficulty arc just works. Like, at least for me, it got hard at just the right level where I always felt like I was being challenged just the right amount. And so overall, when I could get past the controls and the camera work being incredibly wonky, the game was really rewarding, and it had just the right amount of story for me. There is a story going throughout the levels before and after each. Levels are about 30 minutes, and you get about 5 minutes of story before and after each one, where you're in town and you're talking to people. And although I don't care about story too much, it was just the right amount of time to relax after one of those really challenging boss fights. Feel like you're progressing more than just getting through the level and then start the next one. And even though the first level was hard for me to get through, after I killed the second boss, I just really wanted to start the third one. And it has kind of an addicting quality to it. I think it has a lot to do with the boss fights being so much fun. But I really wish they could fix these controls, put in some key bindings, give us some options on how the camera works, because there's so much potential here. I think it could go even further if they added some environment art and you weren't always inside of these invisible cubes. But for what it was a lot of fun. It's available on Steam. If this seems like something you would enjoy and you could get past the frustrations of wonky controls, then I definitely suggest checking it out. I had a blast playing it, even though at times, of course, it was quite frustrating. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you enjoy Starchaser if you do plan on playing it. I'll have more indie game reviews coming out soon, so hit that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date on those, and I will see you again soon.